Hey guys, Todd here. Today we're going to install the Metal Max fender flares from Rugged Ridge on this Jeep JL. Now this is going to work for the 2-door, 4-door, and Gladiator models. It's also going to work for all your factory light combinations, including daytime running lamps and switchbacks. The tools we'll be using for this installation are a ratchet with a 13mm socket, a 13mm wrench, a 10mm wrench, 4mm Allen wrench, number 2 Phillips screwdriver, scissors, and a heat gun. Now make sure you subscribe to our channel to stay up to date with our latest content. Let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so let's go ahead and start getting some things assembled. Now this is the light kit that comes in with your flare. These are side specific, so if you look at the edge over here, it's gonna have an R for right. This is our passenger side light. What I'm gonna do, go ahead and peel off the protective film that's on it, because you wanna do that before we start putting that in, because after that's installed, it's going to be a lot more difficult to peel that off. Now, when we look on the inside, we're going to see we've got a couple of holes right here. On the bottom, we've got a foam strip. So it's important to understand that that goes to the bottom. What we're going to do is find our brackets. These are our light bar brackets that are in our kit. The circular part right here is going to go over top of that mount. And we're also going to take one of our provided screws, put it inside there, and then use a Phillips head screwdriver to tighten it down. Now, as you're doing this, make sure that the L portion of the bracket kind of goes over the foam strip here. We're gonna go ahead and tighten that down and repeat the same for the next hole with the next bracket. All right, let's go ahead and get this installed into the flare. Okay, so here is our passenger side flare. This is the front portion, and this is the part that light is going to install in. So let me go ahead and set it on its side. Now, when you pull up your light, you're going to notice that these two holes are going to line up to these two holes, and it's going to slide right into this position here. Now, this is going to be a super tight fit, so keep in mind that this is a little bit pryable. We'll need to kind of pry that apart as you fit this into place. What I like to do is put this side in first, get it wedged in there, and then rotate this one around. And once we have these holes lined up, we're going to use our provided hardware. Now in your kit, you're going to have two different sizes of M6 Allen head bolts. You're going to be using these shorter Allen head bolts. Go through your M6 washer and get that in there finger tight for right now. Also line up the other one. I like to make sure they're both lined up before I tighten anything down, because you also want to make sure that you line up that light exactly where you want it. All right, now that I've got it nice and centered, we're going to go ahead and use a 4mm Allen wrench and tighten down both bolts. All right, let's go ahead and head over to our Jeep. All right, well, we've already gone ahead and removed the factory fender flare from the vehicle. If you want to see how to do that, feel free to check out our video on how to remove a factory fender from a Jeep JL. Next, we're going to go ahead and disconnect our negative battery terminals. We're going to use a 10mm to do that. And to keep them from regrounding, I'm putting a rag in between the terminal and the wire. All right, let me go ahead and set the flare in place. Now, I'm going to show you, we've got a few tabs here that have holes. We've got one here, and one here. Those are going to line up to factory locations here, here, and here that all have holes as well. So let me go ahead and rotate that down. Make sure those holes line up to the factory holes. All right, so this is our rearmost tab, and for each one of these 3 tabs, we're going to use a provided M8 bolt with washer. We're going to go up through the hole, and then on top, we're going to place another washer and a nylock nut and put that on there finger tight. We're going to repeat that on all 3 of these tab locations. Okay, now on these 2 holes right here, what we're going to be doing, because we don't have a whole lot of room, we're going to be using nut plates to go back behind those 2 holes. Now before you just start using that nut plate, I do recommend to take the provided hardware and run through the threads on that nut plate. You want to clear out any kind of powder coat that might be on the inside of those threads, so you're not trying to run any kind of bind as you're trying to get everything started. Once you've cleared the powder out of the threads, go ahead and slide that up back behind, and once you get the hole lined up, you can go ahead and take your supplied bolt. Now we're using the M6 bolts that are longer in your kit, along with a flat washer. Go ahead and set that in place. It's also helpful to kind of push the fender up against there to get everything lined up. And once you get the threads lined up, go ahead and rotate the nut plate sideways, and then finish putting that in there finger tight. We're going to repeat the same on the front bolt. All right, now when we follow the inside of the flare down here, the second to the last hole from the bottom, we're going to move that around. This is the next hole we need to go to. Now, if we had the factory fender liner, there'd be a great big void inside here. We'd be able to fit our hand in here, and we would be using another nut plate back in this location. But we don't have the factory fender liner. We actually have the Rugged Ridge fender liner. It provides a lot more protection, and it also provides us a threaded location right here that I've already taken the hardware from this kit out of, and we're just going to replace it with that same hardware. All of this we want to leave loose until we've got everything lined up. Okay, so now we're going to focus on these 3 holes. Now all 3 of these holes are going to be using the larger flat washers behind the hole along with a nylock nut, and then on the front side the same. What we've been using is the longer of our M6 bolts with a flat washer. Now we're going to focus on this one first because that one's the most difficult to do. Okay, now we don't have a whole lot of room back in here to hold things in place, so I'm going to show you what you want to do is take your washer with your nylock nut and kind of get that lined up, and as you start to slide that back in there, just grab the material and pull it out away from you. That way you can get that lined up and you can release it. Now go ahead and take your bolt with washer, get the hardware lined up. All right, now that I've got it hand tight, we're going to go ahead and move down to the next one. All right, now just repeat the same for the other 2. All right, now that all the hardware is loosely installed, we're going to go ahead and hold the flare in place and tighten up all the hardware. I'm going to start here, work to the other side, and then lock everything down. We're going to use a 10mm on the back side where the nylock nut is, and then a 4mm Allen wrench for our hardware at the front. All right, now there's not a whole lot of space up here to fit a socket, so I'm going to have to finish this off with a regular Allen wrench. All right, now we're going to use the 10mm to hold the nylock nut in place back here and tighten down with a 4mm again. Because this one is going into the inner fender liner, we're just going to go ahead and turn this in. All right, we'll be using a 13mm up top and also a 13mm socket on the bottom. All right, repeat the same on the other 2. Okay, now with the wiring, we've got 3 different scenarios. So what we're going to have here is a spade connector. If you have factory halogens, what you're going to want to do is slide your white wire onto the spade connector, and then the red wire, get that nice and taped off. If you do not have halogens, if you have factory LEDs that are not switchbacks, then what you're going to do is you are going to plug in the red to the spade connector. And if you do have switchbacks, you're going to take this wire and then plug it into this connector on the relay. If you don't have the factory switchbacks, you'll just be taping this off. So basically, if you hit the turn signal and it blinks yellow, then you have the switchbacks. If it just remains white, you do not have the switchbacks. So we have the switchbacks, so we're going to pull this back, and we're going to slide this into place. You have to fit it down in there, and then once you can't pull it out, it is nice and attached. Next, we're going to go ahead and cover all this up with some heat shrink. All right, so now we've got a large heat shrink tube from our kit. What we're going to do is we're going to fish it up this and up to our module up front. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut this in place to where we've got the right amount. We don't have too much hanging off the end. I'm going to open that up. I'm going to slide the line through, and I like to keep the relay kind of focused towards our box. I'm going to slide that up like so. and then fit that over top of the module a little bit. And I'm gonna make a couple of relief cuts and set this in place so it holds onto the box well. I'll add a zip tie right across here. Right now I'm gonna use a heat gun and shrink that down. All right, next what we're gonna do is take our plug and plug it into the factory receptacle. And then this gray tab, push that in. Now you can either just run this up above here and tie off all the wires with zip ties, or you can pull back your fender liner and route everything back behind there. Now just repeat the same process on the opposite side and reconnect your battery and ground, and that concludes the installation. If you found this video helpful, make sure and give us a thumbs up. If you want to know more about the product, check the link in the description below. And as always, if you have any questions, call the experts or visit us online at RealTruck.com.